to bring all you publishing people together in one space and give you this wonderful lawn here at Narayan Nivas to chat with each other, to have lunch, to have a small cocktail in the evening in a more intimate, in a more beautiful surrounding. And I would like to actually specially thank Norla today because they were our lunch sponsors, and I just would love to thank the Norwegian Embassy and Norla for having treated us to this delicious lunch this afternoon. And before we begin, I invite Sonjoy to come and say a few words on Bookmark, and then we will proceed with the plan for the day.
I think this is the only place I can actually come up with a glass of wine and not be photographed and thrown into jail instantly. Wonderful to be here. In fact, Namita and I were discussing that maybe she and I should shift here permanently away from the madness of the larger Z Jaipur Literature Festival. This was an idea that Namita had, I think, about a year ago. And we kept discussing it, wondering whether we should begin it this year, next year, last year, whatever. And we said, no, let's go for it, because we felt there was a real need for authors and agents and publishers, well, primarily publishers and agents to meet with each other. Over the past few years, we've been doing it more accidentally. Every time we met somebody, somebody wanted to meet somebody else, we used to try and introduce them or find them in the large crowds in Diggy, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. And as Rick, who is our sort of ambassador from America, will tell you that when I bumped into Rick about 5 years ago in the bookstore, which was a very small bookstore then, and I said, what are you doing here? And he said, I've come from Seattle and I'm from a bookstore there. And that conversation then led to us setting up something in Seattle, which Rick supports. And then, of course, Rick suggested a number of authors whose works were then published and picked up by American publishers there. And that therein, in fact, there was a thought that so much is possible. As Namita keeps saying, that today in India, the regional language writing is so rich and the tradition is so full of such incredible stories which are not celebrated in the way they should be because they're restricted to a particular language or a particular readership, that's where we see this really going forward, where you're able to get translations of a Marathi novel into Bengali or into Tamil in a much bigger way that's happening right now, and therein after that take it also to many of the international destinations. So we are hoping that Bookmark, that we're inaugurating very modestly here, grows over the next few years and really becomes a fantastic platform for publishers to meet and discuss and debate many of the issues that are seen as challenges. I was telling Anuj Bihari earlier this afternoon that there was somebody from the press said to me, publishing is dying. Nobody is buying books. So I said, do you want to just look around here and see how many people there are? And they said, no, ye to alag hai. And I said, no. 10 years ago, a best-selling novel used to sell 3,000 copies in India. Today, a best-selling novel sells 30,000 copies. That's really 150,000 copies. Well, somebody like Amish Tripathi sells 2 million copies. But you can see that in India we're different. We are touchy, feely. We have a soul, we have a heart. Most importantly, we want to buy the physical product. We celebrate the physical. We want to smell the book. We want to see the cover. We want to put it on our bookshelf. We may or may not read it. That's a different matter. But the issue is that we do buy it. Occasionally, we like to burn it. I mean, in our first year of the Jaipur Literature Festival, Namita's books were burned. And I said, Namita, I hope those were true copies and not just somebody photostating, pages, because, that's a great thing. So we have a different relationship with books. And I think that's something that will grow, not just in India, but really the neighborhood. Because it's the neighborhood that, in a sense, that we represent. We're also very keen that over the next few years, Bookmark celebrates writing um, really in the way that Namita works tirelessly through the year and fights with us in terms of saying, the focus has to be about the regional. The focus has to be on languages that are not accessible. And that's one of the reasons why this year she looked at endangered languages as a key theme, because she said that, we need to understand the other. A festival like this today, at least in Jaipur, it's not necessarily only about the written word. It's about an idea, it's about a thought, it's about the tomorrow. It's about what freedom of expression means. And like I said, for those of you who were there yesterday at the opening, writers write not necessarily to please. They write because they have a volition to write. They write because they have an idea of the tomorrow. And until and unless we provide them these kinds of platforms, society in itself can never ever evolve. The reason why we are here today is because societies have evolved. We have evolved. Of course, in India, our rules haven't evolved and our laws haven't evolved, and sometimes even our topmost court sort of tends to go back to 1867, and I know I'll be smacked for that. But that's true. And we have to encourage debate and discussion, and the only way to do that is put it out there through forms of books, through forms of publications, on the net, on the new social media, and really look at the other and ensure that these voices are paramount, and these voices find a way into the hearts and minds and souls of people, not just here in the festival, but live on beyond, live on through bookshops, live on through their presence on social media and on the net, and live on in the hearts and souls of people. Very, very important. We'd really like to thank Norla for coming on board and making this possible. When this idea was mooted, my immediate thing, the festival for some years has not been balancing its budgets, primarily because every year we're having to invest more and more to accommodate more and more people coming in. But when Norla came on board, we were absolutely delighted because we knew that they, with us, believed that there was a future in what this particular program was going to be. And I know it's going to grow, and with their support and effort, it's going to become bigger and brighter. We'd like to thank all of many supporters, Sahitya Kala Parishad, Niyogi Books, DC Books, Sahitya Academy, NBT India, for being part of this, and most importantly, this wonderful venue where we're sitting having a quiet meal and a glass of wine without being disturbed on the lawns of Narayan Nivas. Thank you, Prithvi, wherever you may be, for allowing this festival to happen here, and we hope to grow it year on year. Let me introduce to you the person who really was behind this, Margaret, to say a few words and launch the first Jaipur bookmark. Margaret.
Thank you very much for inviting Norwegian literature to come to Jaipur. On behalf of Norla and the Norwegian Embassy, I'm delighted to wish you all welcome to Bookmark 2014. I'm very proud and honored that Norway is the first country partner at this new professional part of the Jaipur Literature Festival, the Bookmark. And first of all, I would like to thank Namita Gokule and the people of Teamwork Arts for this fantastic initiative and this fantastic organization of the arrangements here. We are most grateful for a unique opportunity to present Norwegian literature and to be present in these beautiful surroundings. I would also thank, on behalf of Norla, the Norwegian Embassy for making such a beautiful stand. It's modeled after a classic Norwegian hytte, as we call it in Norwegian. And you are all welcome after to come in and see and to hear more about Norwegian literature. One could say that there are no book markets so different as the Norwegian and the Indian. And in size, it's true. Norway is a country with 5 million people and only 2 official languages. India is a vast continent with a multitude of languages and one of the world's biggest book markets. But the interest and discussions about the challenges and beauty of language are the same I experience, and I think it unifies us. And out of language comes literature. So I look forward to tell you about the outstanding Norwegian authors and some of the very interesting books they have written later during these days here. And I'm especially delighted that one of them also is present at the festival, the excellent crime fiction writer Jørn Lier Horst. So what do you know about Norwegian literature on beforehand? I'm sure you've heard of many a murderous plot and nasty criminal that Norwegian literature seems to be full of for the time being. But did you know that the whole success for Norwegian literature abroad started 20 years ago with a peculiar children's book which managed to capture readers of all ages all over the world? Jostein Gaarder's Sophie's World is so far translated to more than 60 languages. As an example, the book just recently amazingly passed 1 million hardcover copies sold in Brazil. That should decidedly prove that Norwegian literature travels very well. But I'd like to tell you something more about Norwegian literature, which you probably didn't knew so much about, and that is about the organization called Norla, already mentioned several times here. So I must explain what we do. What is so interesting about Norla is that the organization, which was founded in 1978, only have one important goal, which is to bring Norwegian literature of quality to the rest of the world. And the clear advantage of this is that Norla's staff of only 7 people can concentrate on this important task. What does this mean in reality? Firstly, we are supporting the highly valuable work of translators. The translators are Norla's most important ambassadors and partners. We support translators and see it as an ongoing and very important task, because the level of quality of the translations is decisive and the only way to secure that the literature, both in form and content, is taken good care of in the process. Secondly, we are maintaining a widespread international network of foreign publishers, translators, festivals, and others. We take part in an ongoing dialogue about literature, and we give advices. And finally, we are promoting the very best of Norwegian literature at a whole range of book fairs, and we are supporting a wide range of Norwegian authors who are invited to launches and festivals and so on abroad. Norla's most important tool is the translation support. Foreign publishers can apply to cover substantial parts of the translation costs. Between 2004 and now, we have supported almost 3,000 translations of more than 500 authors from all genres. And on a yearly basis, about 40% of our total budget goes to translation support. One of Norla's basic beliefs is that translation are important, not only because we miss good literature from other languages without them. It's also important to bring the voices from the small languages to the world. Translations between the multitude of languages increases the freedom of speech and the level of democracy in society. We want Norla to take part in the exchange of culture and expressions between nations. But our work is also based on the tasks we have in supporting Norwegian interests. We wish Norwegian voices and literature to take part in a global dialogue to reach the world. And if you look at Norla's results, you will be struck by the surge in translation subsidy which is applied for by the foreign publishers. We support now 3 times as many publications today as we did 10 years ago, and the agencies at home can confirm the same tendency. So as a result of this, Norwegian literature has become much more known among the foreign readers than ever before. And the reason for this impressive increase are several. Norway's international engagement has increased and given us more visibility. We see a new interest from the world in our literature. Furthermore, our own book industry is professional and the right management is taken good care of. And Norla, as a non-commercial organization, works very well with the book industry. In fact, we can act as a unifying body for different interests at home, smaller and bigger publishing houses, a variety of authors, when Norway is approaching new markets. However, as much as Norla's long-term work has given great results, what has to be borne in mind is that the success is first and foremost a consequence of the excellent writing of our Norwegian authors. The level of quality is extremely high in all genres, non-fiction, fiction and children's books. Norwegian authors receive rave reviews abroad and they also get international literary prizes. Karl Ove Knausgård, Per Pettersen and Jo Nesbø are all familiar names to you. It's hard to tell who will be the most successful authors in the future. If we only knew everything would be easy, but maybe not so exciting. Literature from small languages meets harsh competition when presented to a big world, but the concrete results of the export of Norwegian literature shows that quality travels. Norla's work is always within a long-term perspective. Great results will normally only show in a long time span, and the same goes for the network. That's why our work includes both promotion, idealism, and cultural exchange. And we see this extremely exciting collaboration between Norway and Jaipur Bookmark as a new level of exchange between Norway and India. And it will be highly important for Norla to further contribute to this in the years to come. The dominating languages for translations of Norwegian literature are not surprisingly English, German, Danish, Swedish and French. But you can certainly be struck by the fact that this year about 15 Norwegian books will be published in India with support from Norla, in English and Indian languages. And the genres covers poetry, fiction, children's books and classics. I think that's a great result already and extremely promising for a fruitful collaboration in the years to come. With these words, I would like to express all my best wishes for the Jaipur Bookmark 2014, and I really look forward to 3 inspiring days on language, literature and publishing in the unique atmosphere of Jaipur. Thank you very much for the attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. I'd like to thank our advisors, Neeta Gupta and Urvashi Butalia, who put so much of effort into making this possible, and of course, Aditi and Swati for actually being the secretariat behind the Jaipur Bookmark. I'm going to ask Namita to come and just give us a perspective of what she thought of when she thought of this particular idea. But the last thought that I want to leave with you is that as publishers and agents, as you discuss and debate over the next 3 days, don't debate from a space of fear of the unknown. Debate from the position that there is much to be done, there are incredible challenges and incredible opportunities. Our lives here in the East are quite different, and our realities are quite different from the West. We do not necessarily have to copy their particular path. We do not necessarily have to reflect their particular journey. We can create one of our own, and we must do that through respect and through the confidence that this is a new beginning for a better world and a better world for publishing. Namita Gokhale.
So friends, I really don't have much to say except thank you all of you for being here, and do spread the word to others who you know are at the Jaipur Festival. We'll have some brochures here to hand out because we've begun this very much on an impulse. We've been thinking about it for a long time, but it was only at the very last minute that it got action. These things have a life of their own. And so request, give us ideas for next year, give us ideas how to move things forward. But right now, every time in the main literature festival, when you meet a publisher, when you meet an agent, when you meet somebody who may have some ideas on contributing to this conversation, please ask them to come. The next thing I want to say is that in this lawn, with this wind, this very welcome sunshine, I am taken back to one day in 2006 when we began the first of what was then to become our present Jaipur Literature Festival. And I can tell you the audiences were about this many, not more. There were 40 people. I remember that. I think Shobha Day and Willie Dalrymple got 40 people. I think I got 25 or something. And it was like this, and the joy of this intimacy in these first years is, that sounds like a marriage or something, or a relationship, but what I meant was that here it's such an important thing, it's something to cherish, that there are publishers here in the audience who know India, there are publishers who don't know India, there are people who put in a lot of work bridging these gaps. We are eager to learn from each other, and I'm grateful again for all the support from the Sahitya Academy, the National Book Trust, of course Norla, but I don't have much more to say. Thank you, Swati. Thank you, Aditi. May he ask a question? Yes. That's a very good, what he's saying is that there should be a lot of informal time here, because that in between sessions, after sessions, and we do indeed, we have a cocktail hour in the evening, and we have structured it. Lunch and cocktail. So there is time, but we'll always make sure that we do maintain that off time, which is the most precious takeaway from things like this to connect. So if I may now invite Urvashi to come here and to introduce the next panel, and so we begin. And a big clap for the Jaipur bookmark.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I was wondering how Sanjoy could tower over this podium, and it looked like there was a platform, but there is not. Just to give you a little bit of background, Jaipur Bookmark grows out of a short history of panels on publishing at the Jaipur Literature Festival, which themselves grew from being panels, I think, about 4 years ago for 2 days to 4 days, as we saw the really enthusiastic response of people, and as the panels got fuller and fuller with more people coming in. What was quite interesting was a lot of the people who came in were aspiring authors, and we got a lot of questions like, how can I become rich with publishing, and how can I, what sort of royalties should I get, and how do I submit a book, and so on. But there was also a very interesting part of it, which is what led to this, which is the discussions that we had among ourselves as publishers, the chance meetings that we had when we went into those sessions, and the planned meetings that we had when we went into those sessions, which made us feel that there was something to be gained from carving out a separate space within JLF for discussions, professional and business discussions on publishing. And that was what made Sanjoy and Namita bring this thing together over here. Also because in India, although we have a large number of book fairs, all of them are selling fairs where those of us who participate are desperate to sell more and more and take home cash, which is what you don't get in the book trade. So we are not really interested in talking to other publishers, and any discussion takes away from the time that you might be selling 10 books to customers. So there isn't really a space for professional discussions. And of course, international spaces do exist, but not every publisher can afford to make their way to Frankfurt or London or Paris or wherever it is that they want to go. So that is another reason why we thought of this particular gathering. That's its background and its history. Let me just introduce to you quickly the first panel, which is entitled Synergies of the Glocal. And the participants are Alexander Pringle, Amina Saeed, Arun Maheshwari, and Joe Lusby. May I ask you to come up on the stage? Alexandra, where are you? Are you here? Ah, she's just walking in. So, Amina? Arunji? Please. And Joe Lusby, there. And then our moderator, Rick Simonson. And I'll leave it to Rick to introduce his panelists.
What's the microphone setup here? I don't think, oh, this is, okay. Thank you very much. First to Sanjoy and Namita and Urvashi for, thank you for their comments leading up to our being up here. My name is Rick Simonson. I'm here from Seattle, as Sanjoy mentioned, in this sort of very incidental way. I've gotten to be involved here in first coming to Jaipur 4 years ago, and now I'm here. But honored and delighted to be part of this and to see where it all goes. First, we'll do a brief introductions, and then you'll hear from each of the panelists here. And I think, especially with the people who are here attending, this will be a good chance for back and forth conversation, so we know part of what concerns are being brought to by you. But first, to do introductions, and I think I'll do it in Jaipur style alphabetically by first name. Alexander Pringle, who is second from my left, who is the group editor at Bloomsbury, both out of London and here publishing in South Asia. And she has quite a background and has been coming to Jaipur for a number of years, working as she's presently editorial director and has numerous authors that she's published, including Jhumpa Lahiri, who's here this year, numerous others. Next to me is Amina Saeed, who is the managing director of Oxford University Press in Karachi, and is known in many ways there. She's the first woman in Pakistan to head a multinational company. Is also very much in kind of a parallel universe as a co-founder and organizer of the Karachi Literature Festival and the Children's Literature Festival, and this year is been one of the judges for the DAC South Asian Literature Prize. To the far side of from the stage here, Mr. Arun Maheshwari, who is the managing director of Vani Prakashan, which is India's leading and largest publisher of Hindi literature. He is the elected representative of the Indian Publishing Fraternity of Sahitya Academy, and is the general secretary of Hindi Prakashak Sangathan. And Mr. Maheshwari will be speaking in Hindi today, and his Aditi Maheshwari, who is both daughter, but she's also director of copyright and translation at Vani Prakashan, will be interpreting for him. And to his, Mr. Maheshwari's right, is Jo Lesby, who is the managing director of Penguin China and general manager of Penguin North Asia. She's been based in Beijing for 16 years and is herself part of one of the companies in great transition, Penguin, and with its merger with Random House going on, which is a subject of a lot of other forms of conversation. And my own role here is a little funny because I'm from a bookshop in Seattle, and I have no direct role in publishing, but I mean, I'm on a few boards of both a poetry press that's based in the States as well as a university press. But from my vantage point of almost 40 years of doing that work, I have seen the way large publishers and small publishers work within the United States, and also, though it's generally seen as an English language publishing country, there are other languages there, and so I think there's part of my sense of being here is that there's things for people from the United States to learn about how in South Asia all the different languages are published and read. The United States has a lot to learn in that regard. So I think first, each of the people in that same order will say a little bit about what I think is the statement or the question posed in the subject, which is how the global, as these larger global companies and forces come upon us wherever we are, and how regional and local publishers exist with that, and how that includes both certainly the various languages here, as well as English, which many of the larger companies coming in predominate with. But it'll be a chance to talk, especially with the Indian languages, how they both how they function with the large companies and how the large publishers themselves seeking to publish in other languages here, how that's fared for them. And I think we have two people here from the larger companies from outside who can help talk about what that perspective has been for them, and then we have some perspectives here that we'll talk about from being based here more. So I think with that, we'll begin with if Alexandra could start and say a few things about how this looks to her.
That's all right. I'm not sure it's working. Can you hear me? No. Oh yes, we're on. Well, in a way, it's I think slightly insidious starting with me because I am the person from the outside, and in a way, I think would be more interesting for me to respond to what my fellow publishers say, because really I am an interloper here, except that Bloomsbury has started a company here, Bloomsbury India, and we began just over a year ago. And so that's an incredibly exciting new venture for us. We are also, as a company, very different from the big global publishers. We are what we call a medium-sized independent, and we are independent. We're not owned by a great multinational company like HarperCollins or Hachette. We come out of England. We are a PLC, so we are owned by our shareholders, which means we have to be profitable, and we have to make book publishing profitable, which is one of the hardest things in the world. Whereas the conglomerates have other interests and other ways of making money, whether it's in the media or elsewhere. So we are an anomaly in many ways in the world of publishing. But our vision for the future is that increasingly the world has become, and I have to say I hate the word global, and I love listening to Jhumpa Lahiri this morning saying that she thinks the word global is all about a commercialization of what she thinks is something which is really being international. But what has happened is that territories have broken down with the advent of electronic publishing, with media reacting so fast across the seas. You can't any longer publish a book 1 month in America and 6 months down the line in the UK and 3 months later in India. You really have to publish together. And to do that effectively, you should publish as one company. And that's why we have a company now in America. We started that about 15 years ago. We have a company in Australia, but that doesn't have an editorial office. That's really to publish the books that come from the other countries into Australia. And we started in India, and crucially, we do have an editorial staff there. We have Dia Kahazra, publisher, and Himanjali, and so they are both building a list here and publishing the books that come from the other parts of the Bloomsbury organization. But what we do that's very different from other publishers is we work really closely together. So we buy our books together. So if Dia has a book that she's passionate about, we've just taken on Sanjay Roy, an absolutely wonderful collection of interlinked stories. And we will be publishing that not just in India, we'll be publishing it also in the UK and the US and in all our markets. And that's something that we can offer that other publishers can't necessarily offer. And that's what I bring here in a way, is what we see as quite a new way of publishing. And you can only do that if you have a certain intimacy with your staff. And the companies that are huge can't really have that because we have editorial meetings together. Every Tuesday afternoon, we speak to Dia and to our colleagues in America and our colleagues, and we are all together in London. We exchange what we're reading, we discuss, we buy together. And that's something that's really quite new. I think I'll leave that.
Good. Amina?
Thank you. I hope this is working. Well, actually, our model in Pakistan is different. At Oxford University Press, although we are part of a very large university press with branches all over the country. In Pakistan, our publishing is actually based on our own decisions. And our focus is on publishing books written by Pakistanis, but not only by them, but any book that is relevant to Pakistan, written by any author around the world, but as long as it's relevant to Pakistan, we publish it. We do, as I said, make our own decisions, but we have to make those decisions within the framework of the overall editorial policy, which we follow, of course, but within that we have quite a lot of room to maneuver. And a part of my job is also to publish books that are published by other publishers, to get a license for Pakistan and to make them available for the Pakistani audience. So in a way, actually, we have a very strong local role in the country. And I think that gives us a lot of strength, because we develop relations with our authors, very close relations, which I think is an essential ingredient of successful publishing. And we also develop very close relations with the market, with the trade, with the readers, with universities. We do this through various strategies, but just being present in Pakistan, having staff all over the country, having offices all over the country, puts us in a unique position of a local publisher. where we can nurture and develop relations with our authors and with our markets. However, at the same time, I think there are some I suppose local publishers, independent publishers based in Pakistan, have certain advantages in the sense that they're more empowered. They can run their business the way they want. And at times I find that that is not in a way that wrong use is made of that, because they don't always follow best practices. Sometimes that they are certainly more empowered, but sometimes that can be also misused. But I do feel that local publishers, local independent publishers are far more empowered than others, and that gives them a certain edge. But at the same time, I think that having a strong base in Pakistan, as we do, and making our own decisions with regard to publishing, and yet benchmarking our publishing to international standards and following best practices of international publishers, that gives us an edge. So actually there are both, you can say that there are advantages and disadvantages of both positions and both kinds of publishers.
Do you publish in multiple languages?
Yes, we do. Actually, we publish primarily in English. About 75% of our publishing is in English, but we publish in Urdu, and to a small extent we publish in Sindhi, Punjabi and Pashto.
नमस्कार. नमस्कार. मैं मूलतः तो मैं हिंदी पुस्तकों का प्रकाशक हूँ. करीब 5000 पुस्तकें हमने प्रकाशित की हैं, परंतु यहाँ मैं पूरे भारत के, हमारा देश 24 भाषाओं का और असंख्य बोलियों का देश है. हमारे देश में 24 भाषा की पुस्तकें प्रकाशित होती हैं, बड़ी मात्रा में प्रकाशित होती हैं. मैं यहाँ उस पर बात करना चाहता हूँ. हमारे देश में साहित्य अकादमी है जो 24 भाषाओं के लेखकों को पुरस्कृत करती है, जो कि एक पूरे देश के लिए सम्मान और गौरव का विषय है. इतना बड़ा देश, इतनी बड़ी आबादी और इतने ज़्यादा प्रकाशक, फिर भी हम विश्व बाजार में अपनी उपस्थिति नहीं बना पाते. इस समस्या पर हमें यहाँ बातचीत करनी चाहिए कि ऐसे क्या कारण है कि हम विश्व बाजार में अपनी उपस्थिति नहीं बना पाते. देखा जाए तो 50 करोड़ लोग हिंदी भाषी हैं, जिसमें से कुछ करोड़ लोग हिंदी पढ़ते हैं और कुछ पढ़ने की प्रक्रिया में हैं. फिर भी हमारे पास विश्व में बाजार नहीं है, जबकि इंडियन डायस्पोरा देखा से पूरे विश्व में हमारे भारतीय, अनेक बहुभाषी भारतीय हैं.
Should I translate in one go, or should we do it gradually?
Maybe gradually.
Gradually?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I get the mic?
Oh, yeah.
Namaste. I'll be translating whatever my father would be saying in Hindi into English for you all. Well, so far he's mentioned that India is a vibrant land of 24 languages and numerous dialects. Sahitya Academy, our body of letters, awards books and authors from all these 24 languages, and that's commendable. Even despite having so much diversity and so much good material for making a good body of literature as a country, we've not been able to make our mark in the international market. Hindi, for example, our national language, is spoken by 50 crore people, but we know that not all of them read it. So that's a very peculiar situation in front of us all.
भारत की आबादी का 65% हाँ, भारत की आबादी का जो युवा पाठक है वो 65% है, और यहाँ एक बहुत बड़े पोटेंशियल मार्केट है, भारत एक बहुत बड़ा मार्केट है, लेकिन फिर भी हम इसको क्योंकि यहाँ माइक्रो लेवल पर व्यवसाय होता है, गांव-गांव और कस्बों में किताबें जाती हैं, फिर भी वो एक इतना बड़ा मार्केट है जहाँ तक पहुँचना मल्टी लेवल मल्टीनेशनल कंपनियों के पहुँच के बाहर है। वे भारत में मल्टीनेशनल कंपनीज ने भारत में स्थान बनाने की, पहुँच करने की कोशिश तो की, परंतु वे सफल नहीं हैं।
As you all know, that this is quite a revered fact across the globe now, that India is a very fertile land for any kind of market, with its 65% of the population below the age of 35. In this situation, when we talk about the Indian languages and the books produced in those languages, we feel that there is a disconnect somewhere, because despite having our resources in place, and making our way into the grassroots of the Indian language market, we are somewhere not able to cut the edge. We are trying to find out the reasons for the same. There is a very interesting observation here, because the bigger conglomerates across the globe, like Harper, Penguin, they've tried to have their Indian languages imprints, but they've not been successful so far. So, what is it that doesn't make them successful in the Indian market, in the Indian languages? And what then, again, he didn't say it, but I can just say it on his behalf, I hope, that what makes this mad trade of books so inspiring for generations for Indian languages? For example, I'm the third generation into this. So this is what we are going to discuss further now.
The Penguin office in China was started in 2005, and in many ways, while I think a bit like Alexander, I'm an interloper here as well. This is really not my territory, but when we set up Penguin in China, the initial intention was very much to mirror our experience in India, which goes back 27 years, which was to build a company around a mix of local publishing alongside imported publishing, so that we could be selling the right books into the market. And as you know, we're sort of referencing, a lot of this was English language for Penguin in India for many years, with a small amount of local language publishing. For us in China, very quickly we understood that the market in China is overwhelmingly Chinese language, and that we had to have local language publishing in our mix quite early on. So the way we run our publishing company now in China is we have 3 streams of business. We sell our imported books from international markets, but then beside that we also have local language publishing in China. So we have local publishing in Chinese and local publishing in English. The local publishing in English is around 10 books a year. It's a very small list. The local publishing in Chinese, thus far we now have around 250 books, almost 300 books in print in Chinese, and we'll have another 100 coming in next year. So for us, the focus is very much about our local language publishing. We also have a small office in Korea, which does something very similar. It sells the imported books, but also it's developing local publishing partnerships in the local language. And so the way we're looking at North Asia is to sort of use our strength, which is our imported books that we have in large numbers, but then beside that run local publishing programs where we think it's appropriate. And I think the question of what big publishers should be doing in local languages is a very interesting one, and it's certainly one that we spent a lot of time thinking about before we made any of our plans.
I think first let's follow up a little bit with what Arun was saying and what Joe's touched on about larger publishers trying to publish in the languages here, but even to keep it at another level, like how within South Asia, between the languages, how that mechanism has or hasn't been working for translating each other's work from the different South Asian languages. And this could also include, not necessarily just what your Oxford's situation is with what you do there, but say in Pakistan, where knowing other publishers, what they go through with that may publish in Urdu and other languages there, have the multinationals come in and try to do that. And what do the publishers there do with each other in terms of publishing in other languages relative to each other?
Well, actually, as I said, that about 75% of our publishing is in English, um, which is an anomaly because the major readership in Pakistan is in Urdu, although there is a hardcore English readership. The difference between the two kinds of readership is that the English readership is can afford to buy books, they can afford better prices, but it's a smaller readership. However, I think because of their purchasing power, they give us a good turnover. The Urdu readership is vast, but the purchasing power is small, and also it's a different market. And we are trying to understand that market and get into that market, and we have succeeded to quite a small, to quite a large degree, I would say. And the difference is, I think there are in the Urdu market, there are a lot of retail bookshops, but they are very small bookshops, and they have to be serviced on a more regular basis, almost on a daily basis, because they cannot invest to buy too many copies of books, so they buy small numbers, and then they have to be replenished regularly. So it's a different way of dealing with that market. The other thing is that the Urdu readership is actually more interested in verse, whereas the English readership is more interested in prose. And we find that if we publish English poetry, it doesn't sell very much, but in Urdu poetry, whether it's contemporary or classic, it is invariably a bestseller. So there's this interest in the readerships in the two languages. There are Urdu publishers in the market, and certainly they are more agile than we are, because again, we operate within a certain policy framework, but they are completely independent because they are small publishers owned by a family, and I think that's where the difference comes in. But as I said, they're more agile, but because of their total empowerment, they also take shortcuts. At times, the quality of their books is not really of an acceptable standard. At times, where they can get away with it, their pricing can be high. I mean, they see if the book is if the author is such that it's not a standard professional way of pricing. And I think at times they even take liberties. In the sense that they would publish an author who's probably not alive, or whose heirs are not there to check, and they will tamper with the content of the book to suit the market. So there are these issues with some of the local publishers, and this is something that for example, what we did this year. We took a book published, written by Manto, the very well-known Pakistani novelist, a short story writer who died in 1954. And we actually read every single word, and we managed to get hold of the original works, and we found that the works published in Pakistan were edited versions. So we he has a huge corpus of short stories, so we have to bring out multiple volumes. So far we brought out 2 volumes, and we have called them the complete Manto, and in every sense they are a complete Manto. So there are various ways of working and various strategies that are followed by local Urdu publishers, or even by local English publishers, and by the Pakistan branch of Oxford University Press. There are these differences, but later I'll talk about piracy if I get a chance.
I'm sorry.
Today's Manto's death anniversary.
Yeah.
Manto's death
Yeah,
anniversary.
That's
today,
right.
today.
That's right. That's a good
Thank you.
point.
Did you want to follow up on that? Yes, Arvind.
60th.
या
Yeah.
पाकिस्तान के बाद भारत को ही कुछ कहना चाहिए, क्योंकि मीर का दीवान उधर भी है, इधर भी है। कुछ
जी,
समस्याएं
बिल्कुल।
उनकी भी हैं, कुछ हमारी, सब एक जैसी हैं।
गालिब
अभी
भी
आपने जी अभी आपने मंटो का नाम लिया, तो पाकिस्तान मैंने यात्राएं की थी मंटो के बच्चों से मिलने के लिए लाहौर, और मंटो की 30 पुस्तकों को मैंने उसमें छोटी छोटी कहानियों में डिवाइड करके उसको प्रकाशित किया। और मंटो, इस्मत, ये सब हमारे अपने हैं,
कुरतुल-ए हैदर।
कुर्तुल-ए हैदर साहिबा। और तो भारत में हमारे यहाँ एक प्रकाशन के नाते हमने भी एक बहुत बड़े ट्रांसलेशन, अनुवाद के काम को अपने यहाँ लिया, जिसमें कि भारतीय भाषाएं और विदेशी भाषाओं के प्रकाशन किए गए। भारतीय भाषाओं में भारत की सभी भाषाओं से हमने पुस्तकें प्रकाशित की। बंगला और हिंदी में तो अब कोई अंतर नहीं रह गया है। महाश्वेता देवी हों, चाहे बंगला के कोई बड़े से बड़े अच्छे नए राइटर हैं, वो सब हिंदी में प्रकाशित हैं। मलयालम, तमिल, तेलुगु, कन्नड़ आदि सब भारतीय भाषाओं की पुस्तकें अब आपस में भारतीय भाषाओं में मिलती हैं। हिंदी की किताबें बंगला में या दूसरी भाषाओं में मिल जाती हैं। इसी तरीके से हम लोगों ने अपने इसको प्रकाशन को और विस्तार देते हुए, जैसे नॉर्वेजियन लिटरेचर है, वो हमने प्रकाशित किया। नॉर्वे के प्रधानमंत्री शायद 2-3 वर्ष पहले हमारे स्टॉल पर रहे, उनके लेखकों के साथ आए थे, ये एक सम्मान की बात है। जर्मन प्रोजेक्ट्स हम लोगों ने किए। तो भारतीय भाषाओं में सारी भाषाओं का साहित्य स्वीकार है। कम से कम हिंदी एक ऐसी बड़ी भाषा है जिसमें किसी भी भाषा के साहित्य को हमारे पाठक ग्रहण करते हैं। रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर, जिसे हम हिंदी का ही कहते हैं, हिंदी के ही लेखक कहते हैं, हालांकि वो बंगला से हैं, लेकिन उनका एक एक शब्द हिंदी भाषी पाठकों को याद है, वो जानते हैं, उससे प्यार करते हैं। तो हिंदी एक बड़ी विशाल भाषा है और उसके पाठक वर्ग भी विशाल है, जो पूरे विश्व में है। बस समस्या हमारे साथ जो आ रही है वो ये आती है कि विश्व भर में वो पुस्तकें कैसे जाएं, ये एक बड़ी समस्या है। बाकी यहाँ हमारे देश में चाहे लिटरेसी का लेवल थोड़ा कम है, परंतु पुस्तकों का लेवल बहुत बड़ा है।
इंडिया और पाकिस्तान के अदब में तो बहुत ही
बहुत आपके तो
एका है, कुर्बत है।
आपके 50 लेखक जरूर मैंने छापे हैं।
अच्छा।
So, just to translate, I think translating Ghalib is beyond me at this juncture, but what they meant was we are one in one story. Well, around, to begin with, that Manto, Kurtula and Haider, Ismat Chugtai, the authors that are hallmark of Pakistani literature, if I'm correct there, they are very much our own. They are very much a part of the Indian subcontinent as well. When we talk about translations, so Indian languages are communicating a lot with each other, whether it's Bangla, whether it's Malayalam, Tamil, Punjabi, Marathi, Hindi. They are all communicating a lot with each other. Well, this was just about the Indian scene, but if you go a little offshores, internationally, Norwegian literature, German literature, Swedish literature, Polish literature, they've all been a part of the big Hindi family. I mean, we can talk about Hindi because we belong that space. It was in 2010 when the Norwegian Prime Minister launched a collection of beautiful short stories on Vani Prakashan's bookstall. So the exchange is going at that level.
Maybe that 8.
Maybe it was 2009 or 10. Okay, we can correct that fact later. So when we talk about Tagore, when we talk about Ghalib, it is all of Tagore is now available in Hindi. All of Ghalib can now be read in Devanagari Lipi, which is our script for Hindi writing. So there is no watermark distinction anymore. I mean, there is no watertight distinction anymore. Where we feel the heat, where we see there's a problem, is the distribution network. Despite producing the best literature, the best authors, the best quality books, we are not able to reach out to a global market. Despite having our diaspora that is interested in lapping onto those books, we are not able to reach out to a bigger market. And that's where we feel our problem is.
Good. Thank you. Alexandra, you said at the beginning you wanted to not say anything at the beginning because you're here to learn.